Hola, bon dia i benvinguts de nou a l'Àgora Port. Un dia més, com sabeu, aquests dies estem acostant a la ciutadania tota la transformació del port, la Copa Amèrica i els reptes que tenim per davant per assegurar la salut del mar. Avui comencem l'agenda amb una taula rodona amb navegants d'èlit que competeixen en la Copa Amèrica i amb una altra sobre les característiques de l'AC-75, que és el barco amb què es faran les regates en la competició. Good morning, and thank you for being here once again. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Agora Port. We are ready to start a very interesting panel. Focus on the top sailors who know about how to compete in the America's Cup. How do they train? How do they motivate themselves? How do they get psyched up? Well, to address these topics, we have athletes, we have trainers, and they are top sailing athletes. They are already seated here on the stage, and they are Sam Meech, Olympic bronze medal sailor from Emirates Team New Zealand, Matías Bühler, head coach, Youth and Women's America's Cup from Alinghi Red Bull Racing Team, Terry Hutchinson, skipper and president of sailing operations of New York Yacht Club American Magic, Nick Barrett, professional sailor and operations manager in Emirates Team New Zealand, and Ben Ping, human performance team from INEOS, Britannia. Hello, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for us to have you here. I would like to start asking you about your passion for sailing, about also the excitement for the America's Cup campaign in Barcelona. Matías? Sorry, we will start from you, and then we'll go this way down.
Yeah, I mean, the America's Cup is something I've always wanted to be part of, and to be able to do it here in Barcelona is going to be amazing. You know, sailing up and down off the waterfront and off the beach and seeing all the people there, getting me really excited.
Now, Matías, sorry.
Yes, obviously, as Sam said, I think Barcelona, it's a great city. Sailing-wise, I've been sailing here for many years, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to deliver the proper conditions to have a great success.
Yeah, the America's Cup for the U.S. team is probably a bit unique, as you know, we represent the New York Yacht Club that held the trophy for 132 years and lost in 1983 after an incredible match between Australia 2 and Liberty. And so as a team, it has a special place probably for the sailors and the designers and everybody inside of our team to come here to Barcelona and be able to compete against the challengers and the defender. You know, the venue itself is incredible. Everything shoreside has been phenomenal, and how the city of Barcelona has truly opened up to all the teams, I think is going to make this one of the best America's Cups ever.
We hope so. Nick?
Yeah, well, from our point of view, the America's Cup, we see it as the pinnacle event in our sport, and to be able to compete here in Barcelona, a city that's just opened their arms to us and to the event, is amazing. As Terry said, everything that we've experienced shoreside of this event has been so welcoming, which we're really grateful for, but also the racetrack itself. We've had some of the best sailing this summer since we've been here than we've had in these boats, period. So we just can't wait to get into it next year.
And Ben,
Hello.
you are not a sailor, you're a trainer, but
Yeah.
we can hear you also.
Yeah, so this is my second cup, and the amazing bit about sailing for me is when I was 16, I started teaching sailing, and then I went to university and studied and worked in a lot of professional sports teams, and it's kind of come full circle now that I get to work in it again and explore that kind of world of things.
And next question is for Sam and Nick. You are top athletes. People might see you as happy-go-lucky, but what is your reality? How is your training routine?
I mean, yeah, the training's pretty intense for this. You know, if we're not on the water, we're training in the gym and out on bikes. So it's pretty full on, and you don't get to the end of many weeks without being pretty knackered by Saturday. So a lot of sleeping on Sundays.
And Nick?
Well, my role in the team is a little more focused around the day-to-day operations of the team. So I still try and get in the gym once or twice a day, but it's normally very early in the morning or late at night. And I think everyone in our team is trying to achieve a level of performance, whatever role they are on their team. And for me, the daily training helps me stay focused and stay sharp, and that's why it's an important part of my daily routine.
And Ben, you are very involved in the training of the athletes. How do you help them? How do you ensure that the sailors get enough muscle to generate the power they have to develop then in the performance?
So the interesting thing for us is it's all based around availability. So how often the athletes can train and how much we can then push them as a result of that. And it's just it's a balance. So we kind of work back from the event itself and the demands that requires, and then we work back and build into things from there.
To Matías, Terry. In the America's Cup, speed seems to be everything. Is the training approach different from preparing for an Olympic or another high-level competition?
Well, yes, I think fundamentally it is different. Of course, there are points in common in Olympic sailing and America's Cup sailing, but the amount of performance needed and the amount of technology that these boats have in the America's Cup, you don't have this in the Olympic classes. So yeah, and also the amount of resources. It's big difference in the amount of resources you have in an America's Cup team, and yeah, therefore it's hard to find this kind of performance in any of the Olympic classes.
Terry?
Yeah, well, the America's Cup it's a reasonably flawed competition. With the Olympics or with any of the other racing that we do, you get to measure yourself throughout the year. And here, the regatta's probably already been won. We just don't know what the answer is yet, because the designers have designed the hulls, the designers have designed the foils, and we really don't get to race against each other in the boats until this time next year. And so all this work and all this effort and everything that we're focused on goes to an 8-week window, of which probably, we don't know it yet, but probably the competition has already been won. Where in the other elements of our sport, you have a very concentrated period of time for a regatta, you prepare for it, you go to the event's over, but then you move on to the next one, and so you have competition all year long. Here, we're competing just without being on the water yet.
And Sam, do you think the training approach is different?
I think essentially it's a pretty similar approach. The difference is really just that scale and the speed which you're able to develop. Things which might take you, months in an Olympic campaign to learn, with all the access to the technology and the resources you have with people, you can do that, capture the same information in just a day. So I think that's really the big difference. It's just the speed which you have to develop. And like Terry says, once you launch your boats, you don't have much time. So you need to be able to get that boat up to speed really quickly.
To Nick and Terry, for example, I imagine that making decisions at 40 or 50 knots is very difficult. It's very challenging. It's like driving a car at very high speed with your head out of the window. Does that demand more effort mentally and physically?
For me?
For both.
Okay. Yes, it does. I think the unique feature of these boats, as they've evolved from the catamarans through to the monohulls, it's impressive to see the mental awareness and the instincts that the sailors possess on board, and how they make the decisions, and how, whether I like it or not, how it's evolved. The younger generations, the Tom Slingsbys and the Paul Goodisons and the Peter Burlings of the world, they have a instinct through their development and high-performance dinghies as they've grown up that allows them to naturally make a decision without really having to think about it. Very much like your analogy to driving a car. You don't know why you do it at certain times, but you do it because you can sense that something's going to happen. And it's awesome to witness those athletes in action.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And that comparison between sailing a high-performance foiling boat and driving a car fast is a really good comparison to make. I think no matter what sort of role you're filling on a given day on these boats, you get off the water and you're somewhat fatigued. And that is just due to sort of the G-forces you experience just in the boats going through manoeuvres, round corners, etc. And you're also getting buffeted by a lot of apparent wind, like the boats are sailing so fast, so your body's constantly exposed to the elements. I think we've sort of seen that these boats, each team sort of configures their boat in a slightly different way, but essentially the AC-75s have two groups on board them. One is a power group, and they basically output power through pedaling or through grinding with their arms, and that's to provide hydraulic power to trim the sails on. And the other group on the boat's a driving or afterguard group who set the trim of the sails and steer the boat. And their sort of demand is more mental, because if they make sort of one mistake or have a loss of concentration, the results can be disastrous. We also see these boats travelling at speeds which are, unheard of in our sport before. So the closing speeds of the boats when they come together is really quick. And so the team members who are involved in making decisions around those intersections, their mental demand goes up when we're racing as well.
This following question is for all of you. When you are sailing and you drop in a maneuver and you see your opponents gaining a lot of meters, it's very easy to lose focus, isn't it? How do you recover from that situation?
I think that's one of the hardest things in these foiling boats. If you do come off the foils, your competition's coming at you really fast. So, you just need to stay calm and do everything you can to get back up and going. I think we saw that a lot in Villanova, and with foiling boats, that's just part of it. The gains and losses are that much more.
Matías?
Yeah, well, obviously I agree with Sam, but obviously you need to stick to your own boat, stick to your tasks, and be aware that if you failed, the other teams may also fail. But basically, stay in the present and make sure that you manage to get going as soon as possible.
Yep. I think what they've said highlights it pretty well. What makes the boats so unique is they are very complicated, and the more you can simplify the complication, the better the boat is going to perform, as long as the yacht's up to it. And in this competition, be it a match race, you're racing yourself to make sure that the boat stays on the foils, because coming off the foil is catastrophic. We saw it in AC-36 in a couple of the races in the match where boats came off the foil and big deficits were overcome. And so not only are you racing the other competitor, but in some aspects you're racing yourself to make sure you execute every maneuver perfectly.
Yeah, excuse me, as Terry sort of highlighted, we experienced it firsthand in AC-36 in Auckland. I think it might have been race 6, where we went for a jibe with Prada slightly in front of us, fell off the foils, and they just sailed away down the course. It's one of the most sort of heart-wrenching feelings you can feel when your boat's sitting doing 3 or 4 knots through the water, the other boat's sailing away at sort of 35, 40 knots. But that was, for our team, sort of one of the true sort of testaments and shows of guts that we've sort of experienced, because the sailors on the boat set to work coming up with the best way possible, the most efficient way that they could get the boat in the right part of the course to try and find the wind, and also focusing on the technique required to get it back on the foils. And in those sort of conditions, when the boats fall off the foils, if it happens to you, it can potentially happen to the other team as well, which we experienced in that same race. We got back on the foils, Prada fell off the foils, and we ended up winning the race. So it's sure is an emotional roller coaster ride when that happens.
Difficult to recover. Ben, would you like to add anything?
I think from my point of view, it's quite amazing to hear when you hear the communication between the guys in the water, and how when situations are going well and then situations are going bad, and how they communicate all together. It's quite amazing to see one person leads and the other follows, and then the next person might lead the next part, and then the other person follows. And it changes throughout. It's cool to hear.
In the America's Cup, boats seem more like planes than ordinary boats. Is like a new sport, or is it still fundamentally still sailing?
Yeah, I guess it's fundamentally still sailing. Yeah, when you first jump on these things, they're so different, from any other boat you've ever sailed before. You're looking at screens instead of looking outside the boat at the wind and the sails, and you pull on goggles and you're going so fast. So it's such a different experience than sailing a traditional boat.
Yeah, I think foiling is great. It's adding a new dimension to our sport. It's true that the fundamentals, they stay the same, and a good racer, good sailor will probably be able to get the best performance in a normal non-foiling boat and a foiling one. But yeah, I think it's great. We are all learning a lot about this new dimension in the sport.
The airplane analogy is a good one. When you contemplate that there's roughly 80,000 man-hours that go into building an AC-75, having experienced watching the construction process and the amount of detail that goes into producing these boats, in AC-36 we were partnered with Airbus and had the opportunity to tour their facility in Toulouse, where you see the A320 being manufactured. And the 75 in the airplane followed a very similar pathway to be at the water or the air. And so it is truly it is a plane on water, and all the subtleties that go into flying it well apply.
Like a new sport.
Yeah.
I think that one of the great things about sort of the foiling generation is that it sort of opens the sport up in a number of different ways, as you mentioned. Instead of, a lot of different skills are required from the sailors. Sure, the fundamental sailing is still the same. You still have to position yourself in a match race in commanding positions against the other boats. But then the whole instinctive nature, as Terry mentioned earlier, of this younger generation of foiling sailors that comes through. There's not the decision-making process goes from actually thinking a decision through, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to position ourselves here. Sometimes it's just instinct as to what the sailors feel. So it's obviously opened up the excitement a lot. It's made the sport a lot more spectator-friendly, and it's an exciting time.
It's quite amazing to see just the difference between the last cup and this cup. Even just the boats are the same, but the athletes are fairly different in terms of their physiology. Swapping from the upper body grinding to lower body cycling possesses some different challenges that you've got to overcome. And then with the previous boats, the catamarans as well, like the growth has been amazing. From my point of view, the cups previously haven't been massively demanding physically, but now they're proven to be quite a nice challenge for everyone.
Nick, Terry, for sailors with as much experience as yours, what's the difference between being on board and being in the sideline directing the teams?
I think, for my role in our team specifically, I have to oversee a lot of operations from sort of a global level, so making sure that different areas are interacting well with each other and sort of trying to get a gauge on the overall efficiency of the team. When you're competing on the boat, it's a lot more one-dimensional. You're trying to extract the maximum performance out of yourself or the athlete and the boat itself. So it's different, but at the end of the day, no matter what your role in a team such as an America's Cup team is, it still overlaps a lot because you're all trying to achieve the same common goal, which is to win the America's Cup. So you still have to work very much aligned with each other.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's the transition from the sailboat to the chase boat is about knowing how to support the sailors and what they need on the day to be successful on the water. I think everybody acknowledges that the boats are very intense, and the sailors are, they struggle to keep up sometimes with the information that's coming at them. And so every opportunity you have to simplify the race for them, you take it. And that's, my personal experience as we go forward. That's how we'll support the team to win. But it truly is a team operation. I mean, you can't remove one piece of the puzzle without having a knock-on effect to the performance of the boat on the water. And I think that's what makes this competition. And this particular event in our sport makes it so unique is because you rely so heavily from the kitchen staff to the shore team, to the designers, and then finally to kind of the tip of the spear for the team, the sailors when they're racing the boat. But without one of those pieces of the puzzle in place, then the sailors won't succeed.
We would like to talk also about the simulators. They are increasingly used as a method of training. How important are simulators? Sam?
Yeah, the simulators are really important. You know, it's really good for the muscle memory. And the time you spend in there then makes, once you get on the boat and you've got all the extra elements there, you know, it makes it a lot simpler. But it still doesn't replace going sailing. You know, hours on the water are still everything in this sport.
Well, from my experience more in Olympic sailing, and I think in every sport there is techniques to be able to reproduce what you are going to go through in your competition. And some of the tools is visualization. And I've never found such a efficient tool as the simulator to be able to visualize and to go through what you will have on the water. And then from a design standpoint, yeah, obviously a simulator is an amazing tool. It's a living animal. I say that it's evolving as the whole team evolves around the boat. So it's amazing.
The man we should ask about simulators is standing right over there with the glasses on. He started it on an island about 20 years ago, and I think when you contemplate the success of the Defender, a lot of that has come through the development of the simulation, and probably all the teams here are catching up to that. Internally, inside our team, we treat it as our second boat because you're only allowed to build one boat, and so your time component in developing and evolving comes through the simulator and the efficiency of the simulator, how accurate it is to the actual boat on the water. And you know, the true challenge that you have is, even though we've only been at it now for 6 years, through those 6 years, the true challenge that you have is you're always chasing the time component, which the others who have simulators that have been going longer, they're always evolving, they're always a step ahead, so their information is always that much more accurate. So, you know, it's approaching it as your second boat allows you the opportunity to speed it up as quickly as you possibly can to make it as accurate to what the real boat is on the water. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of people.
Yeah, sort of my sentiment's exactly the same as to the importance of the simulator. We, in AC35 in Bermuda, we really stumbled across that importance and found the usefulness of the tool and having an accurate simulator. We, during that campaign, or at the beginning of that campaign, had a vision of what we wanted our boat to look like as far as the appendage packages and how we wanted to be able to control it. But as a team, we didn't have the time or the resource to be able to build the test platform that we needed to and the appendages to go into that boat. So we put our time and effort into the simulator for the first part of that campaign. And that allowed us to run a huge amount of different design shapes and control packages on what ended up being our boat. And that was a large part of our success in that campaign in what we could create as what we thought was a far superior package to the Defender at the time. It's also for new members of the team who may not have the experience sailing these boats, or team members before they get into the AC40s, etc. It's a great tool to get sailors sort of aware of how the boat, what their characteristics are, how they behave in different situations, and from a bit of a safety point of view as well. It's similar to pilots training in a simulator before being let loose on a certain type of aircraft as well.
It's amazing from the outside when you first see the simulator and how it's all, these guys have mentioned how it's integrated into the design process, but like they've mentioned, the cognitive load on the water is massive. So being able to step away from all those extra demands that they require and the resources and put more hours into that side of things and really hone in on certain techniques and communication and things like that, it's a really valuable tool.
Is there interaction between sailors and engineers to develop the AC-75, or is more based on data and computer? Do the engineer listen to the sailors?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interaction between all the end user and the design team, I mean, the sailors and the designers, I mean, most of the time they don't agree. And that's probably the best part about it, because the sailor will have a sailor feel and the designer will have a very specific number that he thinks or she thinks that the boat should perform at. And inevitably over the course of time, you end up bringing both those mindsets more into the middle, and they get out of their corners and out of their arguments, and they realize that somewhere the science is a little bit flawed and somewhere the sailor impression needs to change to allow the science to evolve and develop. But as we're discussing the simulator and the use of that and how, the sailor and the science, how they meet, the information and the data that goes into that simulator, it's a revolving door, and it perpetuates performance and can work for you. But if some of the data is wrong or the sailor doesn't come in line to what the designer thinks, then you'll always be at odds and you won't get the best out of the boat.
What's your opinion?
I think, the difference between America's Cup and a lot of other classes that you can sail, it's not enough just to be a good sailor and able to sail the boat fast. You need to be able to input into that design cycle. And there's constant loop between the designers and simulation and then the end product, which is the boat and the foils.
Matías, what do you think? Do the engineers listen to sailors?
As these guys say, I think that the end user needs to have needs to be able to give inputs as Formula One. They need to be able to share their sensations, share their thoughts, but obviously the designers, they have their own background, their own datas, and being able to find the points in common to design the fastest boat is key.
Nick?
It's a really interesting process, and one of my favorite parts of these campaigns is watching the design of a new boat evolve. That sort of interaction between the different areas of the team is so important, because if you left it solely up to the design team to design you a boat, there's a pretty high chance that the sailors wouldn't fit in the boat, for example. The ergonomics wouldn't be right, you wouldn't be able to drive the boat, so it really is a team effort. Every little detail and aspect of these boats is so important. From Sam's point of view, he needs to be comfortable on a bike and in the best position that they can get the most performance out of it. Pete and Nathan need to be comfortable in their position so they can hold a steering wheel while still braced, have all the right screens and numbers and stuff in front of them. So all of these tiny little details need to get fed into the design, and it's only through constant dialogue and interaction that you can end up with the end product that hopefully pleases each specific part of the team.
And do you participate with the engineers?
A little bit on the bike design and the integration and that side of things, but what's amazing is these guys as athletes and the way they speak the language of the designers. You don't find that in any other sport, where the integration and communication is unmatched, really, and they can go from sailing the boat in sailing terms to going to talk to designers about foil types and aerodynamics and hydrodynamics and things like that. It's wild. It's amazing.
Maybe now it's time to ask our audience if they have any question for the athletes we have here today on the stage. Maybe he needs a microphone.
Hello, good morning. I want to ask two questions. Actually, it's more or less the same one. One is the particularities of the regatta field. What have you been already sailing here? What's the difference of the regatta field and the meteo here in Barcelona in relation with the previous America's Cup, and the sea, the waves, the wind? And that's one of the questions. And the other one is related to design, you were talking now, no? To which point you said that you are only allowed to build one boat. To which point you can update, you can change design, you can adapt design to the conditions here, to which point you can come up with a secret weapon at the last moment, and how, to which point the design will decide, or the crew. That's the questions.
Anyone?
Yeah, for you, Terry.
Yeah, so the race course, I would say so far this year, the race course has been windier than what the historical average would say, and the breeze has been further right, so the sea state has not been as much as what you're normally used to seeing. We've had some incredible sailing days, over the course of when the Challenger Series would have started. And technically we're about 4 days into the, 3 days into the America's Cup this time next year. And you can look around and see what the weather is like and, what we would have. And so the difference between this venue and the venue in Auckland, which we knew was going to be the 3 race courses there, were very flat water oriented. They had current, they had subtle, geographical shifts to it. This race course and this race area is going to present a much different challenge for all the teams because of the sea state, the feedback of the water off the break wall, off the beach, and how that creates standing waves. And then you put a spectator fleet around that. And if it gets light, how is that spectator fleet going to impact the wind field as it comes across? The Mediterranean breeze is a very light breeze by its very nature until you get a very, very mature sea breeze that comes across the course. And so there's a lot of subtlety in that detail. And I'm sure all the teams are analyzing not only what happens now, but looking at the last 5 to 10 years of data of meteorological information that comes across. And it's all with the caveat of the Mediterranean on average is, it's a known fact that it's at a minimum, it's a Celsius degree warmer. And you can go to other areas of the Med where it's quite a bit warmer. And so all these have an impact to the performance of the boat because they're weather related. As far as the evolution of the design, you kind of have what you have when it's launched. There's some subtleties inside the rule that will allow you to change it, but when you put the boat in the water and you put your foils on and you go racing, there's not going to be a lot that you can do to impact meaningful change. There is an area of the rule that has the operating system of the boat has a 2-second delay to it. That's a big area of the boat because in essence, you can do a function on the boat and then 2 seconds later, you can have the boat programmed to change. And there's a lot of evolution that will come out of that side of the boat from a performance perspective. So there's not a lot of time left, even though we have a year till we start, or in earnest that we're racing.
Yes, sorry. I would like to ask you, each team, if you could alter one factor, just one. I don't know, more time for training, more time for designing the boat, more wind, some meteorological conditions, one factor, more money from your sponsors to put it on your boat. Which one would you choose? And of course, this factor would go for all the rest of the teams.
More money, more time. That'd probably be the two. There's always, we're always up against the wall with time. As Terry mentioned, the boats take 80,000 man-hours to build. And that's just the build alone. That doesn't take into account design time, etc., etc. We've talked about the simulators for the crew, but there's also a huge amount of simulation that you can do around systems, modelling of structures, etc. However, all of that takes time and it takes money and the fact of high-end computing power, etc., etc. So I think money and time you definitely take more of, but at the end of the day, we know what the time between events is. We know how much time we've got. Each team knows what their budget is, and again, that's part of the challenge of being the best team, how you can best operate within those parameters to come up with the best product that can win the event.
I think you said you want to hear the answers from all the teams. Please, Sam.
Yeah, I think as Nick said, every team knows which is the time frame, and then they need to find the resources to be able to pull out the best possible campaign, and eventually win the cup. But certainly, I would say that every team, if they can choose something, they would get more time, because with more time you have more options to keep developing your sailing techniques, your end product, which is the boat. And yeah, if you have a faster boat, there are big chances that you will win.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, because it's not, sitting here, if I look in American Magic's, rearview mirror, I can see things that I would do to circumvent some of the decisions that we've made sitting here today. Our team, after AC36, stopped for 12 months. And so at that moment, we gave 12 months of time to the competitors. And you can't undo that. So I agree with the time component, but only to the extent that, that you wouldn't waste it. I mean, everybody has a very set deadline, and we know when the regatta starts. We know all those milestones. If I could change one thing, it would be to put a definitive day that everybody had to have their boat in the water, so all the competitors could see what we have. And you could do it in a manner that would allow some understanding to potentially affect change. Probably what would end up happening is the fleet would get closer and closer from a performance perspective, and it would put it back onto the athletes. But it would be interesting to see how the fleet would evolve if you had a set date that everybody had to be in the water, because then you do what everybody wants. You force the time component into a very narrow window. You negate that competition of designers trying to design for that little bit more performance. So it'd be, maybe it's one for the future, but it's hard to comment on it, only because we are what we are. All the teams are where they are, and you can't undo that.
It's quite easy to sit here and try and think of things like this to say, but that's what part of the challenge is, and that's what makes it exciting. I agree with both these guys, time and money, and we had a long layover between as well, so if we could keep that continuation going, but those constraints is what makes it exciting, so it's hard to say. Like, even more consistent win would be nice, but it would be less exciting because it'd be predictability and things like that. So yeah, the challenge is the challenge, I guess.
And I think that's what's made Team New Zealand, having worked for them in 2007 at the 32nd match, and then watching the continuity of the team as it's evolved over the years, their leadership has always done a very good job of keeping that nucleus tight and keeping the designers designing, because that's where the competition is won. So they're very fortunate in that regard. And then obviously they have great athletes that back it up. And so that's, as we go forward as an America's Cup team, from our perspective, win, lose, or draw this time next year, I think what was just highlighted is critical to the success of the team, so that you're not always just starting from scratch.
We're about to close this interesting panel. We started asking you about your passion for sailing, and I would like to finish asking you if you always see sailing as a competition, or you can see it as a sailing, enjoying a day in a beautiful bay.
At the moment, see it as a competition, but for a while after the Olympics, I stopped sailing and didn't compete, and all of a sudden I wanted to go out and go sailing just for fun. So you can see it both ways, but yeah, at the moment, we're working every day as a competition.
From my side, I'm a competitor, and I like to compete anywhere, but especially in sailing. And to be honest, I don't sail for outside competition. I really enjoy sailing with family and friends outside a competition, but from a personal standpoint, normally I go do something else to enjoy. I have other hobbies, let's say.
I'm a glutton for punishment. I love sailing. I take my kids sailing. I have a little 28-footer at home that we go out and we go day sailing on, and I just took delivery of a little one design boat here that I keep over at the yacht club in Nautico, Barcelona there, and we'll race through the winter on the weekends that they have little regattas. But yeah, I love sailing, so it's easy for me to go out on the water.
Good.
No, sailing's an amazing sport or pastime as well. For me, it's sort of quite different. There's the sport side of it, which is based out of that building over there. But there's also, if a friend invites me just to go for a cruise on their boat, I love doing that as well, Seeing the sea life, the ocean. I'm passionate about the ocean conservation and that sort of thing. So to have the chance just to go cruising around, having a look and seeing what's on the sea is something I certainly enjoy doing.
That's good.
Yeah, competing as well. But just enjoying those moments along the way, like when you have a good day out, everyone appreciates it. So it's part of the process to enjoy it as well, I think.
Thank you so much to these extraordinary panelists. We have learned a lot. Sam, Matías, Terry, Nick, Ben, thank you for being here. We wish you the very best of luck for next year. And I hope people from Barcelona will take it to the beach to cheer you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.